All right, so there's this theory out called the Big Bang Theory. Can we talk about how that theory originated and also how it can help those who may have lost their faith to get their faith back?
Okay, sure. Well, the Big Bang Theory is very, very interesting because it was actually it's a perfect example of what we're talking about here, about the church's openness to science. Because it was originated by a Catholic priest. It was warmly welcomed and embraced by Pope Pius XII, who talked about his enthusiasm for the Big Bang Theory on at least one occasion in his pontificate. The Big Bang Theory ultimately originated from Einstein's general theory of relativity. What happened is that a Catholic priest, looking at Einstein's equations, actually realized that they described an expanding universe, a universe that was expanding from a beginning. And this priest, by the name of Father Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian astrophysicist and priest at Louvain, he actually developed this hypothesis and presented it to the scientific community in 1927. Einstein was not very pleased about that. In fact, he told Father Lemaitre that his calculations were correct, but his grasp of physics was abominable. Einstein didn't like the idea of a universe expanding from a beginning. But over the next 6 years, astronomers began to observe and measure the expansion of the universe, and it became clear that Father Lemaitre had the right idea. In fact, Einstein ultimately recognized that himself. But what the Big Bang tells us, in effect, is that in the universe, space itself is expanding. And along with time, because time and space, as Einstein demonstrated, are connected to each other. So that if you were to run the history of the universe backwards, like to say this morning, the amount of space in the universe would be less than it is now. And if you were to run it all the way back, you would have zero space and zero time. In fact, as Father Lemaitre put it, the Big Bang was a day without a yesterday. Now that's very significant for faith. Why? Well, because then you begin to ask the question, well, what caused the Big Bang? What caused the universe's expansion, which continues on now? If, in fact, you have zero space and zero time at the Big Bang, then it could very well have been a cause that transcends space and time. Well, believers know immediately what you're talking about when you're talking about a cause that is not in space and is not limited by time. You're talking about a divine cause. Now, we're not saying that the Big Bang proves that God exists scientifically, because a scientific process which observes material reality can never prove a spiritual reality. But what we can see is that it shows that it's not absurd to think about an act of creation that was outside of space and time, that transcends space and time, bringing space and time in the entire universe into existence. That's what Father Lemaitre was able to see. And I think there's an interesting lesson there. Many people think, many atheists, especially those who know some science, tend to think that belief limits a person scientifically. It kind of diminishes their ability to see the truth. They're too busy trying to pay attention to what the Bible says or what the church says to actually pay attention to what science says. But I think what Father Lemaitre and the story of Lemaitre and Einstein shows is that Father Lemaitre's belief made him sharp-sighted scientifically. He wasn't afraid to follow the implications of Einstein was not initially willing to take them, right? And that's because he already believed that the universe was created out of nothing with a beginning in time. Right? As a Catholic and as a Christian, he already recognized those truths. So it shows how wrong-headed the idea is that belief makes one less of a scientist.
And so this
religious belief.
And this theory doesn't necessarily prove the existence of God, but it does help aid in...
Exactly. It shows the believability of God's revelation on the basis of reason. It shows that it's not absurd to think that way, to think the way we do as Catholics, to profess our faith as we do every Sunday in the Creed.